It was a disappointing night for the Buffalo Bills, falling to the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. We're going to break it down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, the Buffalo Bills fell to the Cincinnati Bengals 24-18. They dropped to 5-4 on the season and are currently 9th in the AFC playoff seeding. 9th. That's right. If the season ended today, and it doesn't, the Buffalo Bills are not a playoff team. Disappointing, right? So let's talk about this football game. And I want to get into the offense and a lot of concerns there, the defense. And I want to close it out with a big picture conversation. This game started off feeling like we were going to have a fun football game, right? Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, two top-tier quarterbacks exchanging blows. Touchdowns on the opening drives for both teams. But then the Bills' offense just completely turtled up before scoring a touchdown on their final drive. So the Bills score a touchdown on their first and their last drive, and that's great. But it's what happened in between there that's concerning. The Bills had 9 offensive possessions in this game. Like we mentioned, touchdown in the first one, touchdown in the last one. The middle 7 produced 3 points. 3. And the offense put the Bills' defense in some very difficult spots. And we'll get to the defense, but I thought the defense gave the team a chance. But to get 7 possessions in a row that amount to 3 points while committing 2 turnovers, you're not going to beat many teams doing that, especially on the road against a Bengals team that's playing good football right now. And that's the story of the game. Another offensive rut, another stretch of miscues on offense, penalties, and mistakes on offense. Your run game was ineffective, right? And not only ineffective, but disappointing when they tried to lean on it, right? You try to lean on this run game to have this threat of being two-dimensional, which is the priority of the football team. And to me, it took away from the rhythm. They came out and scored that touchdown, really just Josh Allen throwing the football, spreading them out, getting the ball to Diggs, getting the ball to Khalil Shakir, getting the ball to Dalton Kincaid. Then your next series, you start to run the football, and all of a sudden you can't move the ball. So an ineffective run game. You had some protection issues, right? The offensive line collapsed at times. Pressure up the middle, pressure off the edges at high leverage critical downs. You had 2 really bad turnovers. Really bad. Josh Allen, interception. So after you score a touchdown and then you try to run the ball a little bit and it leads to a punt, you get the ball for a third time, and Josh Allen very quickly throws an interception picked off by Cam Taylor-Britt. I've talked about Josh Allen having some misfortune when it comes to turnovers, especially the interceptions, some bad luck. That wasn't bad luck. That was a terrible decision. That was a terrible throw. Playing cover 2. Cam Taylor-Britt gets a jam. He sinks back and picks off the ball. You can't underthrow it. You can't make that decision. You can't underthrow it. Dalton Kincaid fumble. Unfortunate, right? Trying to make a play. I mean, he's flipped upside down. Jermaine Pratt's able to stick out his arm and punch the ball loose. But you can't have it. I mean, you wind up scoring on that drive. Who knows what happens at the end? So 2 bad fumbles, or 2 bad turnovers. So a bad interception, bad fumble. You get no production out of your number 2 receiver, Gabe Davis. None at all. 0 catches on 2 targets. Sloppy offense. You only possess the ball for 23 minutes in the game. You can't sustain drives. And it's not one thing, folks. It's not one thing. People are going to have their hot button items that they're going to cling to and champion as the cause of the inconsistency. But it's not just one thing. It's a number of things. And I've said this before, when it's a number of things, I tend to look at the coaching. Yeah, Ken Dorsey certainly deserves a lot of blame for not just the lulls and the ruts of this game, but seemingly the last 5 weeks. Yeah, literally the last 5 weeks, it's just been ruts and lulls, and you can't establish any level of consistent rhythm with a mostly healthy offense and a star quarterback in Josh Allen. So yeah, Ken Dorsey, point the finger at that guy. Point the finger at Josh Allen. Dude, you got to stop turning over the ball, man. You got to be more decisive at times. Gabe Davis, number 2 receiver, team captain, contract year. Where were you, bud? Where were you? Some protection issues. Pressure up the middle, pressure off the edge. Ill-advised penalties at times. It's a number of things, folks. Be willing to accept that. It's not just point the finger at one thing and feel like that's your cure-all. It's a bunch of things working together. Thought there were a couple of good things on offense that I wanted to point out. Stefon Diggs, 6 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. Dalton Kincaid, 10 catches, 81 yards on 11 targets. Obviously, the fumble stands out. But that level of involvement is staying at a high clip now, this 3 weeks in a row. You feel good about that. Khalil Shakir, another good game. 4 catches for 57 yards on 4 targets. How about this? Khalil Shakir has 18 catches this season on 19 targets. The only one he didn't come down with was the one, and I went in on him for not catching that pass. He kind of elevated up and couldn't make the play, but the guy's caught 18 passes on 19 targets. Very consistent. It's very cool to see him being able to step into this number 3 receiver role. And maybe you can make a case that he's jumped Gabe Davis in some regards, but it'd be nice for Gabe Davis to offer this team something. Yes, this team continues to be in lulls and in ruts. They can't rely on Gabe Davis. Again, it's not one thing. It's not just Gabe Davis or rushing offense that you can't lean on, or Ken Dorsey and coordination issues and Josh Allen and turnovers. Like, it's a lot of things. It's all of those things. But the bottom line is, once again, you had sloppy offense. Once again, you had an offense that put the defense in bad positions, miscues and mistakes, and just not enough rhythm, and an awful lull. I mean, you're talking about a lull. You're talking about 7 drives in a row where you produce a total of 3 points in a game that, let's face it, you really shouldn't have been in it, but you had a chance. And if your offense could have had a bit more of a pulse in those middle 7 possessions, maybe we're talking about a different result on Sunday Night Football. All right, I want to talk about the defense here and kind of get into some of the good of the defense, but also where the defense is not doing enough. But I need to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And folks, it's so easy to create a free job post over at LinkedIn Jobs, and then once you do, add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. to spread the word that you're hiring. And then simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's talk about this Buffalo Bills offense. I'm going to have some good things to say about the Bills. Let's talk about this Bills defense. And I'm going to have a couple of good things to say about the Bills defense, but don't get it twisted. The Bills defense still didn't do enough in this football game. Now, they start off this game, the first drive, bad as usual, right? For whatever reason, the Bills defense on that first drive just seems to really struggle. They come out and they just don't have their bearings under them, right? It's sloppy. It's bad. They score. Now, the second drive, they gave up a touchdown again, but I thought that the defense played better. You had that awful Tim Settle roughing the passer call. I mean, just an egregious call. You're allowed to have a step, and it was, to me, a perfectly clean hit. And then you get him in a 3rd and 10, and Sean McDermott gives them a pretty aggressive pressure look that I thought made it easy on Joe Burrow to find space to throw the football. And on the play before, Sean McDermott was aggressive with a pressure look on 2nd and 10, and I said to my brother, that's all McDermott needed to see to go aggressive again on 3rd down, and he did, and made for an easy opportunity. He wound up scoring on the drive, but I thought they played better. But then after those first 2 drives, since he had 4 punts, he did score another touchdown. They had a turnover down on downs and a field goal. So you give up 2 touchdowns in a row. Then on their next 7 possessions, 4 punts, a touchdown, a turnover on downs, and a field goal. I thought the defense gave the Bills a chance in this game. And what I keep going back to on defense, and it's certainly a big deal in this game, was injuries. Of course, Matt Milano, Trey White, Daquan Jones. But Terrell Bernard goes down in this game with a head injury fairly early on. Christian Benford, your #1 corner, didn't play in the second half with a hamstring injury. Dane Jackson went down late in the game. I mean, there's a point in time where the 2 corners on the field were Josh Norman and Rasul Douglas. I mean, what do those guys have? 8 practices combined? And they're on the field in high leverage situations late in the game. Micah Hyde missed time. He got banged up a couple of different times in this football game. And so you have decent results on defense despite the injuries, despite Cincinnati seeming like they had good field position all night long. He certainly, the Bills put the offense, the turnover, the interception, put them in a short field. I don't think you won the punting battle at all. Sam Martin was not great in this game. And the Bills offense wasn't sustaining drives, so you were punting from not great positions and starting deep in your own territory. It felt like you were losing the field position battle all night long. And I think under those circumstances, to hold them to 24 points, it's fairly impressive. I mean, you got production out of Rasul Douglas. You got production out of Linval Joseph after they've had 2 practices. You did some decent things here on defense. That doesn't mean there weren't issues, because there absolutely were. And I think it starts with your defensive line. Didn't do enough. 45 dropbacks in this game for Joe Burrow, over 45. 1 sack. Joe Burrow goes 31 of 44 for 348 and 2 touchdowns. And this is what I'll say about Joe Burrow. He's just a very smart quarterback that's decisive. He reads coverage rotations. He knows where space is going to be. He throws it to space, and his targets go make catches. He plays with good rhythm, consistency, and he's decisive. And I think that's a problem for a Sean McDermott defense that is predicated on playing with vision. And you kind of have to get to your landmarks and read and react. Well, by the time you do that, Joe Burrow's already throwing the football. A decisive quarterback, whether it's throwing it and running it. Even when he takes off, he just goes. I think that helps them. I think that helps them a lot against this Bills defense. But your pass rush, just your defensive line couldn't make enough impact in this game. Von Miller, not helping this football team. And I know it's very unfortunate, right? He's an older player coming off of an ACL tear. Like, I get it. That's tough. But right now, he's not helping this football team. And so I kind of get it. Like, you want to play him and get some reps under his belt and see if he can look like Von Miller. But the impact is just not there. I've watched every snap, and I certainly just watched this game on broadcast one time through. I'll watch the All-22 and study it, but it's like, at what point do we have to be honest about Von Miller and just where he's at? And what's frustrating to me about the Von Miller situation is you open up his practice window, you have 21 days before he has to be activated and playing in games. And you didn't take advantage of that at all. You opened his 21-day window, and then he played against Jacksonville. Why not take that time to ramp him up? If this is about him getting ramped up, why didn't you take advantage of that opportunity to ramp him up without having to put him in games? Over here watching him, can't get the angle on the last play. Not making any impact whatsoever, not even sniffing the quarterback. It's disappointing. But overall, the defensive line just didn't make enough impact. And we talked about that as an absolute key. You know, how do you limit Joe Burrow? Decisive, accurate quarterback that makes good decisions and can process. You got to disrupt things up front. You couldn't do it. And you're blitzing like crazy, trying to get some pressure on him, right? So you're not doing the thing you need to do. You need to be able to get organic pass rush with 4 and play coverage with your other 7. Well, now you're rushing with 5, 6, 7 guys sometimes. You're still not getting there, and you're playing coverage with 4, 5 players, 6 players. It's a tough way. It's a tough way to play defense. And so you're not making enough impact with your defensive line, but you're also not getting any turnovers. Started talking about this a couple weeks ago, and it's not going away. The Bills have 1 takeaway on defense in the last 4 games combined. 1. They have not intercepted a pass in 5 games. It's not good enough. You talk about the most correlative statistic to winning and losing in the NFL outside of points for and points against, right? That's obviously the most important, duh. But after that, it's turnovers, and you're not getting any. And so while I'm critical of the offense and the situations that they put in the defense, and I talk about the defense and how they're giving the team a chance, the defense is also not doing enough. They're not getting enough pass rush. They're not winning with their defensive line. And they're not getting any takeaways. Be helpful right about now to get some of those, but they're not getting them. They're not showing up. I know it's tough when you don't have your best players. Like, I get it. It's tough to play your best football when you don't have your best players. Totally understand that. But this defense has to be more opportunistic with negative plays and takeaways. I mean, that's football. That's NFL defense right now. Is about negative plays and bowing up in the red zone, right? Teams are going to get yards. But can you bow up in the red zone, and can you get some negative plays? Well, since he was 2 of 3 scoring touchdowns in the red zone, and the Bills have 1 takeaway in the last 4 weeks. It's a tough way. You're talk about game scripts, right? Talk about game scripts and your path to winning football games. You're not doing a whole lot to help yourself when it comes to not being able to take away the football. Need it to change real quick. Real quick. All right, we're going to have a big picture conversation that I hope you'll stick around for. But I also hope that you'll check out FanDuel. FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is awesome. It's super easy to use, and there's a ton of different things that you can bet on. including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I've been loving these player props. In fact, the Bills didn't win, but I won on FanDuel. I had the over on Joe Burrow passing touchdowns. I had the over on Dalton Kincaid receptions. I had the over on Dalton Kincaid receiving yards. And so, look, that was a nice little consolation prize to the Bills not winning this football game. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and enjoy this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Bills Mafia, let's get personal for a minute. Has anyone ever been caught skinny dipping? You know what I mean? When you're dip that tortilla chip just barely enough to get a dab of salsa on it. It's okay. We've all been there. And sometimes it's not your fault. Most tortilla chips, they can't even handle a chunky dip without breaking right in half. But those days, they are over. And it's time to say goodbye to skinny dipping and hello to chunky dunking, because Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips are literally made to dip. They're strong and sturdy enough to handle the heftiest dips of guac, all 7 layers of dip, and every last chunk in that salsa. I actually love having tortilla chips to go with my chili, and my wife made chili on Halloween. We had the Zach's Mighty out, and you could just dip away, right? We got ground beef in there. We got beans, and they are sturdy. They don't snap in half. There's nothing worse than that when you're eating something with the tortilla chips and they break in half and your fingers fall into the dip. You don't have to worry about that with Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips. So say goodbye to skinny dipping and hello to chunky dunking with Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips, available at Wegmans in the chip aisle. Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips, equipped to dip. All right, let's have a big picture conversation here. And one of the most useful things that I've done recently, and for me at least, and I certainly shared all this information with you, was the second quarter report card. I did that second quarter report card, and it recalibrated my expectations for the Buffalo Bills, because I was very specifically able to see the trends of the first 4 games compared to the next 4. And you could see where it was all trending. It was right there. It was blatantly obvious. And I had this realization that I don't know. I don't know about this team. They're not trending in a good direction. And it's unfortunate. Like, the Bills lost this game to the Bengals 24-18. And I don't know, maybe you can live with that loss. But losing to the Patriots and giving up 29 points to them, and Mac Jones having the game of his life when they haven't had a pulse on offense all season long, losing to the Jets when Josh Allen plays like it's the first time he's ever stepped on a football field, and Aaron Rodgers lasts, 4 plays, and Zach Wilson's thrust into the lineup, and you can't close out that game. And you start to think about that, and you start to think about, you're flirting around with the Giants. You're flirting around with the Bucks. It's not trending in a good direction. I mean, his football team is telling you that they're average. It's an inconsistent football team. They're certainly not a dominant football team. I mean, yeah, weeks 2, 3, and 4 against the Raiders, Commanders, and Dolphins, we'll always have that. But what about the rest? What about the larger sample size? They've played 9 games. 6 times they've been meh. They're telling us who they are. Looking at this stretch the rest of the way, you've got Denver and the Jets at home, your next 2. Then at Philly, the bye week, at Kansas City, Dallas at home, at the Chargers, Patriots at home, at Miami. You're 5-4. The way that I look at this is you better go 3-0 in your home games against Denver, the Jets, and the Patriots. Now, there's no gimmies. This Bills football team, there's nothing that you can count on. They've already lost to the Jets and the Patriots. They've already lost those games. The Broncos just beat the Chiefs, and the Broncos were playing the Broncos off their bye. So if you think those are gimmies, I don't know what to tell you. But ideally, you could win those 3. That gets you to 8 wins. The rest of your games, tough, real tough. At Philly, at Kansas City, Dallas at home, at the Chargers, at the Dolphins. Can you go 2-3? Can you go 2-3 in that stretch? If you do that, you're 10-7. You get to 10-7, I think you got a chance at the playoffs. The problem is You keep losing AFC games. All 4 of your losses are to AFC opponents: the Jets, the Patriots, the Jaguars, and the Bengals. It's not helpful. So can you do what I just said? Can you go 3-0 against Denver, the Jets, and the Patriots at home, and then 2-3 the rest of those games? I think that's your path. Now you go 1-4, then you got 9 wins. You go 3-2, then you get 11 wins. But I think that's kind of the world that we're living in. And it's disappointing to be at this point, right? You've had this wonderful stretch. 2020, you became one of the best teams in the NFL. And what are you going to have to show for it? You're going to have some playoff wins, right? I mean, that's cool. The Bills are one of 2 teams to win a playoff game in each of the last 3 seasons. That's fun. You've had some good winning records, right? The Bills are one of only 3 teams in the NFL that have had a winning record in each of the last 3 seasons. That's it. Like, there's some good things here. But the problem is you feel like you have this opportunity with this special quarterback to go win the whole thing. And we want it bad, right? It's never happened. We all have anxiety about it. And you want the Bills to go win the whole thing. And so that's why this is so unsatisfying, right? 7 years ago, to be in the hunt, these conversations would be fun. Like, oh, yeah, hey, there's a reasonable path. The Bills might be able to get to 10 wins. You go to the playoffs. That's what we dreamed about. Well, now that's unsatisfying, right? That doesn't satisfy anybody. The Bills going to the playoffs, even winning in the wild card round and losing in the divisional round, that's not going to satisfy anybody. They're like, we have bigger hopes for this football team, but they're 5-4. And it's the same conversation about this offense in the lulls. Like, I have grace for the defense. Even though I've criticized them, they need to make more disruption with their defensive line. They need to make more turnovers. Like, I totally am not absolving the defense. But it's about the manner in which they're playing, not necessarily winning or losing, right? Because they've won games. They beat Tampa. They beat the Giants with those lulls, right? Offensive lulls. But they got to wake up at some point. It's got to happen. Like, the flip has to switch, or the switch has to flip. I don't know if it's going to. Maybe they're just an average football team. That's certainly what they told us to this point. Let's recap my predictions real quick. My first one was that Josh Allen would have over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That did not happen. He had 1 passing touchdown. I predicted that Joe Burrow would have over 1.5 passing touchdowns. So remember, this week for my predictions, I did all FanDuel player props. So yes, Joe Burrow, the over hit there. That's what I predicted. So I go 1 for 2 there. I predicted James Cook would have over 50.5 rushing yards. That did not happen. He had 20. Dalton Kincaid, I had a Dalton Kincaid parlay, over 40.5 receiving yards, over 3.5 receptions. That absolutely happened. He had 10 catches for 81 yards. And I predicted that the Bengals would win the game, and that happened. So I go 3 for 5 on predictions. That's like probably my best week yet this year. Unfortunately, I didn't want to be right about the Bengals winning the game, but I was. And I didn't want it to be correct. I really didn't, but I think it really came down. Like, if you can just boil it down to very simple terms, the Bengals were playing way better football. They were at home, and the Bills are now 1-4 away from Orchard Park. Sometimes it's that simple. All right, folks. Next up here on the podcast, the All-22 review. So that's going to be something, right? We'll dig into that. We'll talk about things that stood out there, of course, on our next podcast. And if you're a subtext subscriber, you'll get all the film clips and things that I share in the Discord channel. So check out the Locked On Bills subtext community. There's a link in today's show notes to join. A lot of cool stuff happening there. One-on-one text conversations with me. I send out all my in-game analysis as the game is going through text messages. You also get access to the Locked On Bills Discord channel, which has been awesome. I'm on Bleacher Report tomorrow, as in Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll have a stream on there, so check that out. And, of course, content all week long. Here, Herd Mentality on Tuesday. And then, of course, we'll get ready for Bills-Broncos on Monday Night Football. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.